welcome to the DME podcast, brought to you by DME, the podcast booking platform. Whether you're a podcaster or an aspiring guest, the DME app is the perfect platform for you to get booked and manage your podcast bookings. I'm your host, Sukhay, the founder of DME, and on this podcast we'll be discussing the latest news and views in tech, the ins and outs of entrepreneurship, and even dipping our toes into the adrenaline-filled world of mixed martial arts. On this week's podcast, we had the pleasure of welcoming Khadija Khan. Khadija is a journalist and broadcaster whose work focuses on defence of free speech, liberal values, and she's also a very vocal critic of religious authoritarianism. In this episode, Khadija describes her early childhood in Pakistan and how the strength of her mother allowed her to rebel against religious conservatism. We cover her shock at discovering the limitations of free speech that are prevalent in the UK today, and how we appear to be living in a two-tier society where cultural sensitivities take precedence over basic freedoms. We also explore the culture behind the grooming scandal and the pervasive de facto blasphemy laws that seem to be taking hold. This is a detailed and eye-opening conversation with a brave and courageous woman, so please enjoy Khadija Khan.
Thank you so much, Sid, for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, really appreciate you giving us a bit of time. Kind of like I explained, on the podcast we normally talk tech, business, but I also have a bit of an affinity with cultural war issues and learning about journalism and kind of modern society a little bit. And I followed you online for a little while, and I know you like to write about controversial topics, so I thought you'd be the perfect podcast guest.
Thank you so much. It's interesting that we are, grappling with these issues, and we find it like controversial, but they are, in my opinion, very basic human rights issues. And perhaps that's the reason that people, they are a bit reluctant when it comes to discuss these issues, because they find it like controversial. For me, it's like straight away human rights things, and we have to be, vocal on these issues.
Awesome. Well, we'll get into that then. So, from my understanding, you kind of were born and raised in Pakistan, but now are a journalist and broadcaster in the UK?
Yes, I was born and raised in Pakistan. I started my career as a journalist back in Pakistan. And then because of the circumstances, I had to leave the country. I found my views are quite, in contradiction with the wider society's perspective on, freedom, on free speech, on human rights, and the growing radicalization of the society was quite, I would say, frightening for people like me who believe in free speech and who want to scrutinize ideas for the betterment of human being, because those ideas have a huge impact on human lives, especially on vulnerable people's life. So that was the reason that I found myself trapped, in that situation. And given the first opportunity, I left the country, and now I'm here in the UK, working as a journalist and a broadcaster. And my views and my perspective on those issues are still the same. But the difference is that then I had no freedom to talk about these issues. But today, in the UK, where we believe in democracy, in secularism, in human rights, I have this freedom relatively. Why I'm saying relatively, I will explain later. But relatively, I enjoy freedom to speak of my mind and scrutinize these ideas freely.
So, taking a step back without giving too much away about your age or anything like that, because I know it's rude to ask a lady. But what was the Pakistan that you grew up in like?
I would say in the beginning of my, you can say as a child, there was conservatism, always conservatism in the family. But as a society, I didn't feel much, constraint being placed on women's life. So for me, it was not as a child to go out of the house to play with the, friends, it wasn't a big deal at that time. But now, growing up, I realized that the religious conservatism is just taking root, you know, in the life of ordinary people, because we did have this conservatism and orthodoxies, but it was like a fringe element. But then it was spreading its tentacle. And I felt like that it's hard for me to go outside without covering myself, like from head to toe. I never wore burqa or hijab and all that, but still, it was like very covered clothes, very much covered clothes, and then covering my head and try not to go out of the house alone. It was deemed, a bit immodest, if a girl is wandering around or even going to school or college or university alone. So for me, it was like that experience. That was the time when I realized that things are changing, and not for the better, but for the worse.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of precipitated that change, do you think? Because I think my early memories of Pakistan, and obviously of my own heritage, is from kind of northern India, in the Punjab region, so we're effectively neighbours.
Yeah, exactly.
So the sizes are very similar. So my early days back in the 80s, kind of thinking of Pakistan was kind of similar to India, really. It kind of had both aspects of society. You had your rich, you had your poor, you had your freedoms, and you had some restrictions as well. But when did it kind of tip the balance away from kind of more freedom to obviously a little bit less and a little bit more repressive?
As an individual, I would say that I had always this struggle within me, to come to terms with the religious orthodoxies. I had questions. I was told not to ask questions, not to question religion, because it's a divine word. And I got, a fair share of beating, from my teachers, just to make me not to ask questions about religious orthodoxies and whatever is prescribed about women in religion. So for some time, I did internalize religious misogyny. I was content with whatever was prescribed about women and how women should be treated in religion, in religious discourse. So for me, it was like, it is okay, it's divine, but that, struggle was always there. Perhaps it was because of my mother. My mother was quite defiant woman. I mean, she never gave up to the orthodoxies. She had that defiance. She had to pay a huge price, for being a defiant person. But because of her influence in my life, I learned that if I want to be free, I had to fight for it. Because I particularly, one incident is aged in my memory. When I came back from school, my father, he brought some hijabs, colorful hijabs, for us sisters. And we were happy as a child. It was like, for us, it was like a new piece of clothing, a new experience. We didn't know anything about this attire, before that, because it wasn't that common in Pakistan to put hijab on children. So for us, it was really interesting to see a new kind of, piece of clothing. So we did start wearing it. After a few days, I wanted to take it off, because this is what all children, they do. They don't, they like something, but they don't like it forever. It's just a phase in their life, and their likes and dislikes, they just outgrow, eventually, over time. So for me, it was like, I don't want to wear it anymore. I don't know what was the reason. I felt uncomfortable. It was hot weather. I don't know, but I didn't want to wear it. But my father, he very strictly, he told me that I cannot take it off. I have to wear it. It's the honor of my family. It's the honor of my religion. It's the honor of my father. I cannot just simply take it off. It's not that simple. And he was quite stern, and I still remember, that body language. It was very aggressive. And of course, a child cannot just, argue with the 6 feet tall man, who is being, aggressive. So one day I just came back from school and I saw my mother and father. They were having an argument, and my mother, she saw me, she ran toward me, and she just pulled that hijab from off my head, and she just said that no, I didn't give birth to a slave. That was the sentence that still echoes in my mind. So from that point, I realized that if I have to be free from these orthodoxies. I have to fight for it because my mother did fight, and she confronted my father, and she was punished later on for doing so. So this is what I learned from the life, actually. So for me, this oppression that I saw in my own house, and then in the wider society, and the growing religious orthodoxies around me, they were all compelling element in my life, you can say, in my experience, that pushed me to that limit where I could just defy all these rules. There was no option to be silent for me anymore.
That's it's quite powerful. And your mother sounds like a very courageous and strong woman. Yeah, it's quite amazing.
She is indeed.
So how did you go from obviously those experiences to kind of wanting to write about it, and obviously trying to dip your toe into journalism and kind of sticking up for others who are in the same position as you?
As a young girl, I was quite enthusiastic when it comes to defend, your point of view. I was always a debater in my school, in my college life, in my university life. I received a Roll of Honor in debating from Government College University. So for me, it was always very appealing and very interesting how I can, defend my point of view. But it's not always by speaking in a society where they're, saying anything that goes against, against the perspective of the wider society can land you in trouble. So speaking up is not always an option. So writing was like, you can just, manipulate the words, or you can just try to make a point, in a way which is not very much, open, but still you read between the line, you can just convey this message. So I found it interesting, and I thought that I can, express myself by writing. And that was the time when I started writing. I found a job as a journalist, and that gave me the opportunity to articulate my thoughts. And I couldn't just say or write anything that I wanted to, but still I found, some kind of, I don't know how to explain this, but there was some kind of compromise,
Yeah, so you might not get 100% of your thoughts and feelings out there through your journalism, but you can get 50% out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I couldn't say all the things that I wanted to say, I wanted to express, but still I had a medium to, express my thoughts, and just to make my readers, think about, certain things which are very much normalized in that society, and but also, acceptable widely. And they were like misogynistic, and they were discriminatory inherently. So for me, I just got this opportunity, and I wanted to just avail it. I didn't want to just be quiet, given I don't have, many occasions to speak up my mind. So why not just start writing? And that happened to be a very good decision in my life, I would say, because since then it gives me more, opportunities to articulate my thoughts on these issues, which are very close to my heart. And also it helps me to, being vigilant, or you can say that being vocal on the issues which are very much important and crucial in our time. Oh,
And how were your writings received and your articles? Were they did you get a lot of support, or was it quiet support, or was it a lot of criticism that came alongside it as well?
As long as you are just putting all the blame on the culture,
Mm-hmm.
my criticism was accepted.
Right.
Because in Pakistan, if you are talking about women's rights violation and you are just relating it with culture and not with religion, then people, there is a part of a section of the society that would, appreciate you or encourage you, to continue doing it. But as soon as you mention religion, there is a problem, because the society is not willing to even listen to that argument which states that religion plays a huge role, in the violation of women's rights in Muslim majority countries. So my writings initially were based on the criticism of culture, because as I said, that I did internalize misogyny that was coming from religious discourse, and I was in kind of denial, no, God can't do that. Allah is very merciful. Allah cannot be that cruel to women. So these kind of things, I was in denial. I did internalize misogyny. And then I would, make culture the focus of my writing, that it's the culture that we need to change. But later on, I realized that you cannot change a culture that is stemming from a religion, and unless you address the root cause, and the root cause was religion. So I would say initially my writings were like accepted, appreciated. I got promotion like twice a year. I mean, that was quite exciting. So it was really nice to be able to write on that on these issues, and to be able to get attention, from the people.
When did it?
Sorry.
I'm guessing the fact that you're here in the UK means that you couldn't sustain those quiet critiques of culture. And did you eventually find the reflex action when you started? Did you start criticizing religion openly, and was the reaction one to kind of cause you to kind of fear for yourself, your own safety and well-being?
When I came to the UK, I had a very, beautiful and grand vision of a free society, a free democratic society where largely people espouse secular values and everyone is allowed to criticize religion. So I was, to be very honest, as a journalist, I felt like I'm in heaven. What else as a journalist you need to have that opportunity to just say bluntly what is the truth. But, with the passage of time, I realized that things are not as simple as I was, assuming, I would say, because here the cultural sensitivities, the religious sensitivities, they take precedent over human rights in the UK. And that was the fact that shocked me. And it took some time, to be honest, to come to terms with this reality that even in the UK, if I say things which are like honest, which are blunt, which are factually accurate, still I am gonna get, criticism. With criticism, I'm okay, but I'm gonna get, the death threats, the abusive language, on national TV, the personal attack on national radio. I mean, for me, it's been like quite staggering, I would say, that, I mean, how come people in a free society cannot understand that we have a right to criticize ideas, and bigotry against individuals, these are two different things. We can't conflate them. And if we try to do it, then of course, it's a very reckless and disingenuous effort to protect ideas, not to protect people. So I've been, saying it in my write-ups, in my, discussions, conversations, that I don't want to let people conflate these two things, which are like, one is scrutiny of ideas, second is, bigotry against people, because these are two entirely different things.
Mhm.
And I've seen that time and time again, people, politicians, and British left, try to, I don't know, unwittingly or deliberately, but they try to conflate these two things in order to protect one particular religion, which
Yeah.
is Islam. And I have this freedom to say anything about Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Sikhism. I can criticize religion, other religions. But when it comes to Islam, for some reason, I am not allowed to do so.
Yeah, so I think there is a hierarchy. I think we talk about the leftist side of British culture, or even the Western culture, more than anything. There does seem to be a hierarchy of oppressive groups who can and can't be criticised, and obviously, I think Islam, or people from Islamic background, is kind of high up on that list, which doesn't really make sense, considering they're a massive global majority in terms of the size of religion, nominally speaking. And it always depends on how many people are actually religious versus just the populations of the countries who may be nominally Islamic. But what was the kind of one of the most, some of these stories, what was the one that kind of gained either the most support or the most kind of backlash in the UK that that really surprised you?
If I talk about support, I did have and still have that support from those people who are willing to defend free speech at all cost. And they are the people, some of them, they are atheists, and some of them are, from left, but they are also from conservative, section of the society. But when it comes to freedom of speech, they are all willing to come together and defend this right. So I wouldn't say that I didn't have any support. I did have support, and perhaps that's the reason that I'm still able to work and talk about these issues and write on these issues. So I still have that support. But when I talk about backlash, that is extreme, because when you have that threats on you, on your family, when, for example, at once I was attending an event, and I had a threatening call during that event because I said something about, criticizing Islam like any other religion in the UK. And right after making that comment, I received a call, and it was threatening, and it was horrifying, really, because I could sense that that person was somewhere in that premises, because he was talking about the comment I just said. That gave me this feeling that this person is somewhere here. So it's horrifying, that somebody who is saying these kind of nasty things on the food is somewhere around you. So I told the organizers about that, and they gave me, security and all that.
Wow.
But the feeling of being threatened, it was overwhelming. And they asked me if I don't want to continue with my, panel. The next panel was my own, I was on the panel. So yeah, they asked me if I don't want to be there. I just told them that if I will not go there, that person who is still around me will be thinking that I have given up, and just one call make me, stop talking about these things. So I don't want to do that. I want to, continue doing what I'm doing, because I know that I'm doing the right thing. So when it comes to backlash, it's huge, it's threatening. And, my disappointment, the biggest disappointment is that in this country, law is on my side. I feel like the law enforcers are not on my side. And I feel really disappointed when I realize it in every situation, that if I would go and make a complaint, then I would be quote unquote advised that you should stop talking about these things.
Yeah.
You should.
What do you think is for the law enforcers, as you say, who are unwilling to kind of impose the kind of traditional values of Britain, of a free society in terms of freedom of speech and free expression? I think some of the most notable examples that spring to my mind is obviously during COVID and kind of the precipice of a totalitarian state that we had, which kind of triggered me a lot and kind of woke me up in terms of not liking governments and not liking qualitative control. But even recently, I mean, one of the ones that kind of really sticks in my mind is there was a case of a religious woman who was standing on the corner of on the street of an abortion clinic. I don't remember the name, unfortunately. But the policeman came and interviewed her or was speaking to her and said, "Oh, are you praying?" And she said, "Yes." "Are you praying for the unborn children or something like that?" And she said yes. And she goes, "Oh," and he said, "You can't do that." So she wasn't speaking out loud. She wasn't getting anyone in his way. She was just literally standing on a street corner within the vicinity of an abortion clinic. And for that, she was arrested. And I'm like, you are arresting people for thoughts and violent prayers.
It's thought crime. That's what I find really strange, that on one side, you are arresting people for thought crime, right? But on the other side, there are mosques and madrasas which have been reported to the concerned authorities for propagating anti-Semitism or misogynistic, beliefs or discriminatory things about other members of the society, like infidels and, this kind of derogatory language they are using so openly. But I don't see, police taking, appropriate measures to counter that, because it's inciting violence, inciting hatred. And I'm not that person, to be very honest. I don't want these people to be banned. But for me, it's always like, let people say these kind of things so that I can counter them. All I need is freedom to counter their argument. I don't want them to be banned. But of course, when I see that one person is being arrested for thought crimes just because that person is a Christian, the other person who is openly saying anti-Semitic and misogynistic and discriminatory and inhuman stuff in the mosque, in the madrasa, and that person is getting away with that, of course, that makes me think that it's a two-tier society we are living in. Not all religions are treated equally. And, there is a certain section of Muslim community that always complains that you treat Islam differently. I think we treat Islam exactly the way we treat the other religion. And that is not acceptable for the religious zealots. Yeah. They want privileged position for Islam in a society where we have this freedom to criticize, to mock, ridicule, debunk, denounce religious belief in that society.
To be fair, I don't think it's specific to Islam, because I think you'll get Christians. I know there's been a couple of stories over the years of Sikhs protesting potential offences against their religion. I think I remember a number of years ago, I think someone wrote a play. I think it was either mocking or there was some kind of humour in it around the gurus. And there was the kind of Sikh protesters outside trying to shut it down, and none of them had seen it or anything like that. So, well, you can't. You're guilty of the same blasphemy laws that you're trying to protect against. So I think it's a characteristic of all religions. It's probably a characteristic of all belief systems, if anything. If you've got deeply held beliefs and views, then it takes a lot for you to welcome or even tolerate criticism of it. So you have to be quite stern. It's quite stern in your face to be able to take criticism and do the arguments. And I guess a lot of people aren't.
That's true. But the problem is this, that if we try to protect one particular religion, then of course the other religious groups would be, asking for the same privileged position. Yes. Because if Muslims they claim that that we cannot put up with any criticism of our religion, no matter what. So of course the other religious people are going to say the same thing, and I can understand this, emotional affiliation with the religious things, because we are like I spent most of my life, I would say, as a religious person practicing religion. So I can understand that we are indoctrinated with certain teachings from a very early age, and we grow up, just loving those things, unconditionally. We don't even want to question those things ourselves, even if we find ourselves in being discriminated against. So we even still we don't want to question. I'm saying it from my own perspective that as a woman, I did feel like I'm being discriminated against, but I didn't want to question that, because it was divine thing, and somehow my mind was just making me feel like it is okay. So I understand this feeling. But then if we have one law for everyone, one way of life for everyone, then people would eventually, start understanding the point of view or the perspective of a free society. I mean, we have still Christians in majority in this country, but I can tell you that if I say like, okay, Christianity, there is lots of misogyny in Christianity, and there is still, misogyny. I can tell you that people, Christians, they react quite differently. I mean, they are not aggressive. They're not shutting me down. Even they are practicing Christian, they would try to explain, they would try to, make me understand, but there is no aggression. I haven't faced it yet.
Yeah.
But
I think
when we see that there is aggression in the attitude of believers, I think we cannot justify that aggression. We have to understand that if your religion is a strong entity, your God is strong, that God does not need defending. I mean, you don't have to defend your God, right? That's the thing. If that God has created you, he's running the whole world. You don't have to go out on the street, defend that God. That's so powerful God. So it doesn't make sense to me when people say that.
Here's an obvious contradiction, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. So I completely understand. And, unnecessarily, I don't just go around and say bad things about religion. And I'm not that kind of, I'm not one of those atheists who believe that we need to eliminate religion, in every way possible. I'm not that kind of person. I believe in coexistence.
Yeah.
And I understand human beings need to have that kind of, affiliation, emotional, spiritual affiliation with these concepts of like in different religion. I understand this thing. And my belief is that whether we are religious or we are secularist or humanist, we can still live together. All we have to do is just respect each other's existence, right? We are not obliged to respect each other's beliefs. Mm-hmm. We have to respect each other's existence as a human being, I think. And Britain is largely, I would say, a society which is very tolerant when it comes to, respecting opposing views. But somehow, when it comes to, respecting religious sensibilities, they just, they lose the plot, I would say. Well, so it's like, no, we have to respect, even in the schools that teach kids, you have to respect.
Yeah.
They don't teach them to critically analyze religious belief. They teach them that no matter what, these are the beliefs, you need to respect them. So I find this quite, strange.
Yeah. So how do we kind of turn the tide on that then? And how do you hope that your journalism plays a role in that?
I've been writing about, de facto blasphemy laws here in the UK. I've been writing about grooming gang scandal here in the UK. And I feel like that in my write-ups, I try to give a very fair, open, and honest, context behind these kind of mindset that, treat people not as people, but as labels such as infidel, Muslim, non-Muslim. And I think it plays a huge role in shaping their attitudes.
Yeah.
For example, if you look at grooming gang scandal, they are trying to, first they were in denial, in discussing the cultural aspect of this crime, that this kind of humiliation that they are inflicting on those young girls, on underage white girls, it is coming from a cultural, context where non-Muslim, where girls are, devalued. They are not valued as human beings. They are just treated as objects. And now they are like, there has been a huge backlash. So they are kind of, forced to talk about cultural aspect, but they're still in denial about the religious aspect, because that cultural things seek legitimacy from, or derived legitimacy from religious, discourse, religious teachings, where it is okay to have sexual, relationship with non-Muslim and enslaving. Because I see these girls, when you hear the accounts of these survivors, you feel like they were enslaved, they were not only groomed and then they let them go. They kept them enslaved for years.
Yeah.
And they did whatever they wanted to do to them. So for me, it's like, it's a kind of concept like that they have in Islam, that enslaving non-Muslim women, it is okay and permissible. So these kind of things were also being said to those girls while they were being abused, sexually abused. They were called names. They were labeled as non-Muslim, you're white trash, and these kind of things. So there is these kind of things. And I think I am very happy that I was able to put that context, in the forefront of this discussion. And I just hope that they try to figure it out, that their political correctness in this issue, or in the issue of de facto blasphemy laws. We just saw that a man has been convicted, for burning a copy of Quran. And it's crazy. We can't just have this kind of attitude in our society and not be able to discuss them.
Yeah, so obviously, I think it was it's not Baroness Casey. Is it Baroness Casey report that came out this week? And kind of maybe this is kind of that slow movement of the tide, or that inflection point that kind of sees valid criticism be labelled at all kind of groups, and crime is crime at the end of the day. It doesn't matter how you're trying to justify it. And we do see some justice at the back of this, all the people who kind of covered up kind of the grooming gang scandal that kind of goes back 30 years at least.
Yeah.
And all the people who are meant to be in positions of power and meant to protect vulnerable young people.
Exactly.
I think you need to see some justice. I mean, the one parallel that it draws me, different context, but I'm not sure if you're aware of the Hillsborough disaster in 1989 with the Liverpool fans, and how they were blamed after all the media reporting that 96 people died and it was Liverpool fans' fault, etc., etc. But it took best part of 25 years for the truth to come out and for people to be held to account. And they were still holding trials up to a few years ago, and giving and in Parliament, even David Cameron had to stand up and give a formal apology to the families for the government's role, and various like the police force's role in kind of labelling people as at fault for their own deaths. And I can see, hopefully it doesn't take that long, but I can see the same thing happening in the future with another Prime Minister standing up and saying, yep, this government was culpable, this council was culpable, this police force was culpable.
But I'm unsurprised that lessons are not learned yet.
No.
That's the problem. That Louise Casey's review, I really respect it, and her efforts are really important, I would say, landmark, in this situation, and definitely this report will, extend the further inquiry that we are going to have, national inquiry, and we will have finally justice for these girls who were abused. But the thing is, when you are not having open and fair and frank discussion on the issue, and you're trying to shut down, for me, why it is important to discuss religious aspect of this crime, because it's a mindset, Suk. I've come from a society where people will talk about Western women in a very derogatory manner. They see them as vulgar, as asking for it, always available. And literally mothers are, advising their sons, okay, you are going out, you do whatever you want to do, but don't marry her. Okay. I mean, these kind of things
Wow.
So this is the mindset that we need to challenge. And I think that it's not only about the girls outside of the community. It's also about, within the community, women and girls, they suffer because of this mindset. Because when they go outside of the community, okay, they label all women, okay, these are westernized, non-Muslim women. But when they are in the communities, what they do, okay, this woman is worthy of respect because she's covered from head to toe. Okay, she's wearing long skirt, legs are not shown. Oh, fine, little bit respect. Oh, okay, her arms are bare, legs are bare. We can see everything, So she is totally crap. So this is how they compartmentalize, women within the community. So we have to respect this woman, but not this woman. We have to use this girl, but not this girl. So for me, it's like talking about culture and religion is like challenging that mindset, which is misogynistic, deeply misogynistic.
Yeah.
And it, as I said, it seeks legitimacy. It derives legitimacy from religion. And that culture that we try to, differentiate between culture and religion, it's one and the same thing. Because the culture is stemming from that religious discourse. When you have organized religion, no culture can sustain outside of that religious framework.
Yeah.
It's a closed community, closed, organized religion. The culture has to be, embedded in that religious discourse.
Yeah. It seems like a very daunting task to kind of change culture. Right? Cultures don't change quickly; they evolve over time, and I guess they have to devolve over the same period of time. So it's unfortunate. I don't think there's quick answers to this. It's going to be have to be an incremental change for the better, more than anything, in whichever way it takes. But
I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. But the first step towards that change is to have discussion, dialogue, conversation, and stop threatening people. And when we see people not being threatened, when we will just normalize this kind of conversations, when majority of the society is involved and engaged in these conversations, then we see that those people, those extreme fringes, they will be discouraged, when they would see that there is an awakening, in the mainstream society. People are talking about it. People, my stance on burqa ban. Well, I say that, there should be a ban. And then they come at me saying, oh, you are authoritarian. You are totalitarian. You are talking about ban. It's un-British. Listen, I'm not saying that there should be a ban overnight. We are a democracy, right? When there was a ban on hijab in France, 70% French people, they voted in favor of it. You like it or not, that is a democratic decision. Like we have Brexit. Many people, they don't like this decision, but it is a democratic decision, right? I mean, you can't deny that fact. So for me, you can say, you can have reservations about it, but this decision was taken by British people, and that decision was taken by French people. We are a democracy. I want to have discussion, conversation on these, contentious issues, so that as a society, we can reach a point where we see those things for what they actually are. They are, like a violation of human rights. There is a security concern. And then we will act as a society. This is all I mean, when I talk about ban on burqa. But of course, they don't want to have a discussion. So they want to just shut it down by just hurling around these kind of personal attacks, at me. And for them, it's like that's the thing that they are interested in. Just shut her down, shut her voice down, no discussion on this issue. And eventually, see, we have stopped talking about it.
Yeah.
Right? Just this Islamophobia, you are Islamophobic, you are racist. Oh, you are Islamophobe, you are racist. And eventually there is no discussion.
Yeah, it's easier to attack the messenger than it is to challenge the message, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, just to pivot on a little bit for going back to your own kind of journalism career now. So I think you are founder at the Further Inquiry Substack as well. So you've got your own channel for publishing your own journalism.
I'm an editor, political and cultural editor at Further Inquiry, and yes, it's a very good experience. I have been working as an editor. My own work has been published in the magazine, and it's actually basically it's a Canadian-based magazine. So our audience and readers are mostly Canadian-based, but of course we touch upon international issues and important, crucial social and political issues which are taking place around the world. So yeah, it's a great, I would say, magazine for those people who want to talk about issues which are seen as controversial and people don't want to discuss them. We welcome difference of opinion. We want people to come up with originality, and we applaud their honesty when they write things, and we want to publish their honesty as it is. And I really like this thing about this magazine. And it also gives me an opportunity to get in touch with people, to listen to different, perspectives. Even those perspectives I don't agree with, but I work on those, articles, and I approve those articles, and then I publish those articles. So that's another interesting part of working at a Further Inquiry. So yeah, it's a good experience, and I'm loving it.
And I'm also pleased to hear you're also dipping your toe into podcast hosting yourself.
Yes, that's another part of my job as an editor. I'm a co-host of a Further Inquiry podcast. And yes, we have invited people on our podcast with very, I would say, balanced approach so far. We haven't had any guest who is, going extremely on extreme fringes, but so far the discussions we have been having are so thoughtful and articulated by those guests, and I'm really glad to have them all on my podcast. And yes, it's another interesting experience, and I'm also sharpening my skills as a podcaster.
I'll be waiting to get some tips from you.
Oh, goodness. I don't know if I'm in that position, but yes, it's like, I've been given, a total freedom to say what I want to say, to talk about what I want to, discuss by my chief editor and, the journal, I would say, the decorum of Further Inquiry podcast. So that helps me a lot to, articulate my thoughts on issues. And I learn from every episode, I learn things, how to say things, how to proceed the conversation and all that. And I also look up to, we have brilliant podcasters around us, on YouTube, especially. And I feel like it's a new lifeline for journalism, YouTube, to be very honest.
Yeah.
We have more than one perspective on the same issues. And we have people who wouldn't be getting, opportunities otherwise, on mainstream media, legacy media, that as we call them, but they still have their voice there, and they have a great following. So yeah, it's inspirational, and of course, it's inspiring a new generation, to be open-minded or to be vocal and to be connected. That's the most important. To be connected with the uh, politics, with the social issues, which are very much important. Our generation, and definitely upcoming generation, wouldn't be, uh, you know, living in isolation or ghettoization.
Yeah.
But
I guess it kind of circles back to the point we were making earlier. We were talking about cultures and how they take a long time to evolve, and obviously equally long to devolve. But maybe with the social media platforms we have now and the publishing platforms we have outside of the traditional media, a few broadsheets and a few tabloids and a few 4 or 5 TV channels, now that we've got a lot more views that can be expressed in a host of different platforms, maybe accelerates that devolution of culture for the better.
yeah, that's true actually, because I feel like the thing you said about how culture gradually evolves, I think the social media has sped it up.
Yes.
With social media, I think the change is rapid because we can, motivate opinions, in a couple of days,
Yeah,
with
very true. You do see those movements grow very fast on the social media.
yes.
And
I mean, there are pros and cons of those movements, to be very honest, because sometimes they are, reactionary. So but this is a part of evolution. You learn from bad things, from good things. So I think it's a very good thing that we have social media, and because of that, people who are very much willing in censorship, you know, they don't have monopoly on opinions and on thoughts anymore. People are free to say whatever they want to say, and people, they criticize Elon Musk for hundreds and thousands of things, but that is true that at some point he did make a difference when he said that he's going to allow all voices be heard on X. And following that, we saw Facebook are removing all the constraints from their platform, and so it happened on Insta and other social media platforms. So I think this is it started gradually, but it's spreading now rapidly. So this is the life that we are living at the moment. It's like from one opinion to another opinion. And I feel like people like me who are always open to be persuaded, I think it's very good for us, because I'm not that kind of person who is rigid, on one thing and never want to change my point of view. I'm open to persuasion, and I feel like social media is playing a huge role in informing and in educating the masses who would be interested, in learning all the aspect of any situation or social critical issue.
I couldn't agree more. So obviously I don't want to take up too much of your time, Khadija. So if our audience wanted to follow your work and get in touch with you, or kind of see what your next articles are about, where's the best place to follow you?
I think it's X. X is the best place to follow me. My email address for submission for further inquiry is on X. My articles would be there, my work and everything what I do would be there and is there. So if you would like to follow my work, follow me on X. And yes, I would love to share my work with you, and I would love to receive, all criticism, and I would be happy if it is constructive, because that would give me an opportunity to learn, If you are coming at me with abusive language and, with all kind of bad things, that would not let me, even read what you are writing. I would be shutting down and not reading. So why not get engaged in constructive debate and dialogues and just have, some conversation that actually impacts my life, your life, and the issue that we are trying to address.
Yeah, here. And so if you hear that, audience, please don't be abusive to Khadija, otherwise you'll have us to do.
Don't be abusive to anyone.
Well, we'll link to your ex and the further inquiry Substack in the episode notes. But Khadija Khan, thank you very much for appearing on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Zach. It's a pleasure to be here. And yes, I loved it. I loved having a conversation with you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.